Chapter 1. Milford, Georgia, April 1868. The hard thuds of a fast horse's hooves on the dry red Georgia clay reverberated through Amanda's body, shaking her awake from a sound sleep. She forced her mind to reason. No, they were not coming for her, or March. Her father had not sacrificed long and hard to make sure she was educated, so night riders like Tom Daly and his boys would come to get her. Still, the noise bothered her. Amanda sat straight up in bed and prepared the rifle next to her to shoot on sight. Why was that horse coming so fast? "Stay in your room, March," she called out to her daughter, but continued on, unsure if the girl had heard her call or not. Amanda negotiated the stairs carefully, holding her skirts in one hand and the readied rifle with care in the other. When she got to the bottom, she wiped her hands down the sides of her patched skirt, one at a time. She didn't want the rifle to slip from her hands when she had to shoot. Then, silence. The hard stomping sounds of the horse stopped, right in front of her house. Now, it was up to her to protect everything. "Dear God, please, be with me. Protect me. Protect March. Protect us all. Amen." Wet tears slid down her face into the corners of her mouth, and she tasted her own salt in fear. Those tears might hurt the baby. A quivering rage filled her fingers and made them shake with hate. She had taken in something that might hurt the new life growing inside of her, an innocent who needed her protection. She hated that she had moved down here, and her life would be over today simply because some fool hated the color of her brown skin. She sniffed up the hate. No, it wouldn't. Milford College needed her. March needed her. The baby needed her. Virgil needed her. Maybe the most of all. She pressed her thickening body up close to the closed front door, readying the gun. No, not today. She would fight with everything she had to protect them all. A picture flashed in her mind of her dear husband having to lose another wife because he had been away to work. She stilled her fingers. It had taken her too long to win his love and to reassure him she would be fine in this Georgia wildness. He would be devastated without her. Besides, Virgil was too handsome to be lonely for long. Oh no, she wasn't going anywhere. She cracked open the door and spoke through the small opening in a loud voice. "You can leave. Nothing here for you but the end of your life if you try to come into this house. God bless you. Be on your way." Pushing the rifle through the crack of the door, she held it closed with her foot. Whoever it was had not stayed at the hitching post in front, but had moved off to the side of the house, by the barn, and probably had not heard her speech. Was this person a horse thief? Anyone from around here knew her husband had a fair amount of stock, but if she couldn't do anything to protect it... She stepped out onto the wooden porch carefully, trying not to make a sound. Angling her body toward the barn, she pulsed as her heart beat double, both in her chest and in her middle. The thudding of the heartbeats lightened her head. Was that her baby inside of her? Her breath came, short and choppy. It seemed as if she had waited so long for the baby to quicken inside her, and here it was, at the worst possible time. Still, her hands tingled now with the feeling of love. "Hello, my little one. I love you, and I'm going to protect you. Don't you worry. I'm worthy to be your mother. Protect us, dear Jesus." She pushed the gun around the corner toward the barn doors to see what fool dared to intrude upon their safety while her beloved husband was not home. Not while she had his child growing underneath her heart. She would not fail him. The door opened, and her heart thudded all throughout her body. Don't hold up a gun unless you plan to shoot. The lesson from Amanda's father reverberated throughout her mind. Oh yes, she was ready. Every single sense in her body readied to take the life of someone's child to protect her own. She sensed March coming up behind her, and her tall, skinny daughter grasped up some of her patchwork skirt and held on. "Stay still, March." "Who are you shooting at, Mama?" She didn't miss the quaver in March's voice. Her daughter knew what an accurate shot she was. "Someone in our barn. Someone came fast down the hill to our house and is in our barn." "But, Mama, couldn't that be—" "Hush, child. I need to concentrate. This man won't cause us any trouble." The door to the barn creaked open, and a large, familiar-shaped figure came out. Virgil. It was her Virgil, and he was finally home. She wilted. Instantly aware, March had disobeyed one of their primary rules and managed to get herself off their wooden porch and into her father's arms. Amanda straightened up, took the gun out of preparedness mode, and hung it on the rack by the door. Her tears came even faster now as the shape of her dear husband came into view. He bent down, hugging on March and shouting and greeting to all of the excited dogs that ran forward to greet them. Amanda wanted to smile, wanted to become part of the family reunion scene, but her hands were too slick with sweat. Before she went back out, she smoothed down her patchwork skirt and the braids of her hair. Would Virgil still think she was pretty, after 4 months away, with the change in her now? She caught a small glance of herself in the looking-glass by the door and frowned. Perhaps not. Her usually smooth braids had frizzed when she had sweated, and her round face glowed with her secret. The fear of attack by night riders, come in the daytime heat of April, shone from her face. April? What was he doing here now? Last, he said, the Constitutional Convention was going to end by the middle of March, and he would be home. Now it was the start of April, and there had been no word from him. She frowned more. So relieved to see him, her heart gladdened. But he had some questions to answer. She stiffened her resolve as she walked out of the door. No kissing, no hugging, until he would tell her where he was, 3 weeks late. When she came out of the front door, and he made his way toward the stairs of their home, her feet knew nothing of her resolve. They only wanted to carry her into his arms as fast as possible. She only wanted his thick, juicy lips on hers. Now. Virgil took her into his arms, smelling of horses, sweat, and bergamot. Dear God, she was so glad to be in his arms again, wrapped around in his heat. When he put her back down on the ground and reached his mouth down to hers, it was her sweet reward. Any sensible thought flew from her mind as she received his kiss. She could still taste the salt of her tears mingling with licorice whips, his favorite candy, but she drew him into her, willing him to become part of her so that she would never, ever have to weather the storms of his leave-taking again. His arms tightened around her, and that's what she liked best. His tight, protective hold on her waist, pulling her close to him, so tight, near tight as if he would never let her go. And she liked it that way. Liked it fine, usually. But there was something else to think about. Someone else to think about. He broke off their kiss and pulled her from him, eyebrows forming a triangle on his forehead. She stepped back a little and matched his pitched-up eyebrow look. Usually in their kissing ritual, there was a part when he would take his big hand and smooth down her braids, grasping the heavy twist of them in his hand, to draw her in just a little bit closer. She caught her breath when he pulled her from him, quaking inside a bit at the missed part when he would catch her hair in his hand. "Virgil, I—" "Mandy," he commanded in his deep voice. What right did he have not to be happy? He was the one who was 3 weeks late. 3 whole weeks she had to suffer, deprived of his love, of his touch. "Mandy, you carrying?" Carrying? Amanda tried to sift through the fog in her brain to know what he meant. She had lived here in the South for almost 2 years now, but some things, words, were beyond her knowledge. Her husband cut sideways glances up and down the road, grabbing her by her arm as he did so. The only one around was March, laughing and playing with her 5 dogs in the front yard. "You having a baby?" Her eyelashes fluttered up and down. She bit the inside of her cheek. Why was he talking to her like this? "Why, Virgil, I can't believe you." "Well, yes." He let go of her arm, giving her the stern preacher look he would pull out for couples who had gotten into a whole lot of foolishness before they could get to him to be married. "Yes. Is that what you saying?" "Mandy, we had a deal." He pounded a fist on his hand and grasped his hands together, and he struggled to be patient. She knew. "We said—" "I know what we said." She tried to make her voice strong, as she knew it should be, but it quavered. What was the matter with him? God had a different plan. That happens. She gave a little half-laugh and smiled. Virgil did not smile. Not at all. He stalked off to the barn he had just left, leaving her confused and crying in the middle of the toll road perched at the beginning of Milford proper. The mayor, he was the main law in the town, but he shouldn't accuse her in this way. She didn't know whether to cry or to curse him. Would God blame her if she did both? His Mandy was all up and down. She always had enough round parts to keep her a woman, but she was all angles. She had the skinniest elbows he knew of, especially whenever she would lean on him, staring down at him with her wide eyes, talking into the first morning light over some problem in the town, some way to think about something about life. There would be no more of that now, with a baby around. He forked more hay into Pye's stall. Pye's eyes followed him with concern, like he was crazy since he had just been in there, and Pye didn't need no more food, but he gave her some anyway. Instead, he stuck the pitchfork in the ground and leaned up on it. What did she mean these things happen? They'd been so careful before he left, making careful use of the envelopes he'd learned about in the war, taking precious care of her. That was his job. Now he had gone and ruined it all. He slapped his thigh, but that didn't hurt him enough. What other punishment could he do to himself for getting Mandy in the family way? He couldn't deny it. Everything over the past few days had been driving him like a dog to get on home, so he could bury his face in her braids and feel her skinny elbows digging into his chest with impossible sweet pain. Now, her elbows were fat. Everything about her was round. He could tell the change that overtook her body when he held her to him. There would be no pain when he held her, but he wouldn't be able to have her because of the baby between them. "Daddy?" March came into the barn quietly, looking at him. "What's wrong? You've been gone so long. I thought you and Mama would be happy to see one another, and she's crying and you in here hitting on yourself." Virgil reached down and gathered his girl child in his arms. "I'll go in and help her. She'll be all right." A flash of memory, long stored away, came to him of having to wash Sally's limp, torn-apart body to ready it for the ground. He remembered, with some sharp pain, washing away the tears on her face. Tears that had been there because she had to leave this world, because of her failure to deliver the large child her new master had put into her body without thought or care. Pain knifed his soul in two at the thought the same thing could happen to Mandy. He gave March another hug. Mandy would be okay. He kissed the braided hair on top of his daughter's head. March was here. Sally had March, and she was fine. Why wouldn't that happen for Mandy? Sally's family surrounded her when she had March, but she didn't have no protection with that other baby. Now, because he was away making change, trying to help make a better world for them all, Mandy was in peril in her own body. Dear God, no. Let's go in and help her. Virgil put the pitchfork carefully away before he could do any more harm to himself. No need of fretting. There will be another baby. That's all. People always telling him, without Mandy around, of course, that he needed a son. They'd been married for 2 years almost, and people kept on asking, where was his son? But he had a secret. God blessed him mightily with what he had. His little family was just fine. Didn't need no son. Something happened to him. There were other Baxters here to take care of Mandy and March. He angled his gaze over the bluff, looking down into Milford proper. Looked fine. Nothing wrong. Amanda kept the school running. They were fine. They didn't need anything. See? They didn't need a baby. Amanda would need help with a baby. She couldn't run the school, let alone be in the school with such a heavy load. Still, if there had to be a child, maybe it was better it was now. Looking at her, round as the ripest peach, she'd be having the baby at the end of the summer, in the worst Georgia heat, before school could get started up again. He grasped March's angular hand, and they climbed the porch steps together. Go on and play with the dogs now. I'll fix your mama up. March did his bidding, as a good daughter should do, and went to play. How would a son do? Whatever he said. That's how it should be around here. Straightening up, he went into his house to see his wife sitting on the red velvet davenport with her head down, obviously sad. He approached her with care, noting her curvy body, no slopes no more. And her front, dear Lord, he hardly recognized her there. Look, Mandy, I shouldn't have said it to you like that. I was only you need to be taking care of the school, and I got the town and, well, maybe more of this politics. He hadn't even told her what happened at the convention to change the Georgia Constitution. What would she say to what she had to tell him? That he was late because there was another potential office, maybe a move to Atlanta. Only Mandy hadn't moved. He stilled, and small sniffling sounds of her snoring and crying in her sleep sounded in the afternoon stillness. He was nothing but a squashed earthworm underfoot. He wanted to gather her up in his arms, hold her close to him, but she must need some rest, falling asleep on him in this way. What could he say to his wife while she was asleep? Gathering the newly soft Mandy into his arms, he turned to the front of the house and surprised to hear a firm knock on his door. March wants back in. He put his wife back down on the davenport and opened the door. A strange white man stood there. He wanted to curse, but would not. Preacher men did not curse. Still, the sight of this man at the door was the last thing he expected to see. The news of this baby had shaken him so that he was unprepared, something he never was. Another reason a baby might not work. His head was turned around. In this day and age, a Negro man had to be prepared. He couldn't reach for his weapon, as he might like, so he used his voice as a gun. "Who are you?" "Ah, you must be the famous Virgil Smithson. Good to meet you. I've heard so much about you." The man with greasy brown hair had waxed his mustaches so they stood straight out, looking like some bizarre kind of insect wings on his face. His blue eyes lit up like fireflies. Virgil decided he didn't like him. I said, "Who are you? You got the better of me, and you come into my door, so you best identify yourself now." Mandy's small hand touched him on his arm. "Virgil, I told you, this is Robert. Robert Leakey. He's an old schoolmate of mine from Oberlin. He came out to teach in the school. Come in, Robert." "I hope I wasn't disrupting anything, Amanda." His wife's beautiful brown face showed her deep dimples, streaked up and down with white salt tracks. Her eyes lit a fiery red like a lantern glow. "No, nothing. Come on in." She stepped in front of him to open the door to let this man come in, to their house. Many an occurrence struck him as possible. He could believe it when Amanda came into his life. The inheritance of the Milford farm to the community. He could believe. But when Amanda, his darling wife, invited a white man to cross their doorstep as if nothing mattered, as if he didn't matter, that was unbelievable. An ugly feeling, one he knew and understood was not of God, came up into his hands, and he made fists to chase the ugliness away. But it wasn't working. He and Mandy had a deal, for sure. But a strange man had entered his home, at Mandy's invite. Had his beautiful Amanda struck a better deal elsewhere? Found the literate man she had been looking for all her life? Had she just settled on him so she could stay in Milford? Who was this Robert person to her, really? Virgil went to the Davenport and sat down next to Mandy, glaring at the peculiar man who had invaded the peace of his home. He wasn't giving up the goodness he had won, hard-fought. No, never. Not without a fight.